Okay. I got you. Guess we won't fail. Yeah. All right. Ross's. Yeah. Copy. Hey, how's it going? All right. Okay.
We only have one hit for ourselves. The fourth has two of us. That's two of them. One of which is technically two fields because we should go back of us into the field.
It's 4 o'clock. I'll call the Columbia Municipal Planning Commission meeting to order. We'll start with roll call.
Councilman Coleman,
Here.
Dr. Martin,
Here.
Mayor Mulder,
Here.
Mr. Shannon,
Here.
Mr. Sloan, Ms. Williams, Mr. Goode.
Here, we have a quorum present. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. We kind of rules of conduct of the meeting. There's agenda items that was out front. If there's anything that you wish to speak on, sign up on that. When we get to that item, we'll call your name, give you an opportunity to come forward, and give you 3 minutes, state your name and address and concerns you may have pertaining to that item. I'd like to thank real quick too Mr. Coleman for running the meeting last week. Sorry for my absence, and I appreciate the meeting you ran, so thank you. First item to talk about is the acknowledgement of official communications of the Columbia City Council on annexation and zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There were a few items at November's council meeting there. You did have two more of your zoning amendments dealing with Article 4 and Article 7 that was up for consideration on the last consideration, which did get approved. So both those new Articles 4 and 7 are moving forward and in effect. You also had a second and final consideration on revising the preliminary PUD master plan for the villages at Carters Creek Station Road. That was for the convenience store there. You also had the multiple properties there at Carmack and Cemetery Avenue. The rezoning for that passed on final consideration to go from a light industrial to a CD5. Additionally, you also had for a first consideration was the master plan amendment there for Honey Farm, where they were adding on to the building on the current retail space. And that also was passed on first consideration. Those are all the items from November.
Thank you, Mr. Keltner. Any questions, Mr. Keltner, from City Council? Seeing none. Next item is going to be approval of minutes. You'll notice in your packet there's two sets of minutes to review, one from our November meeting, and then the second set was from last week's special meeting regarding to the text amendments to the zoning ordinance. Should we review each one, approve each one individually? I think so. So yeah. We'll start with the minutes from last month from the November meeting.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Shannon and a second by Ms. Williams. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Mr. Goode.
Aye. Those minutes are approved. The next set would be the December minutes from last week's December 4th meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Coleman, a second by Dr. Martin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Goode.
Aye. Those minutes are approved as well. Brings us to item 6, review of bonds and letters of credit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All letters of credit are in order.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Appreciate that. We've got 3 items on our consent tonight. I'll read the 3 items. If anybody would like any of those 3 pulled for further discussion, please raise your hand. We'll acknowledge that and pull them out. If not, then we'll entertain the motion on the 3 items as a whole. Item number 1 is going to be a request from Alan O'Leary for final plat approval for a revision of 3 lots in Wellington Section 2 on Rugby Court at tax map 101F, Group K, parcels 68 through 70. Item 2 in the consent is a request from Abigail Overstreet for final plat approval with surety in the amount of $370,000 for Hillcrest Village Phase 2, consisting of 24 lots on 6.308 acres, being a portion of property at tax map 113, parcel 80.54 off Morrow Lane. Item 3 is a request from M2 Group LLC for final plat approval with surety in the amount of $455,000 for Hampshire Hills subdivision off Hampshire Pike, being a portion of tax map 89P, Group A, parcel 15, and consisting of 43 lots, 4 open spaces with dedication of right-of-way and easements. Anyone want any of those pulled for discussion? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve, subject to all technical comments.
Second.
A second by Mr. Coleman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Ms. Williams. Aye. Mr. Goode.
Aye. Those items are passed. Brings us to our first item for discussion tonight. Item 1 in discussion is a request from Greg Gamble to rezone property at tax map 90, parcel 7.12, being a 5-acre tract at River Road in Taylor Bend, from PUD, Plan Unit Development, to a CD5 Urban Center Character District with revocation of the water's edge at Taylor's Bend PUD. And it looks like the applicant is requesting a deferral to the January meeting on this item.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is correct. We did receive notice earlier this week that they are still looking at comments that they received from the community meeting they had a few weeks ago, and would like a little bit more time before addressing anything with planning.
I know this one had some people here last week, but I don't see anybody has signed up to speak on this, so unless there's anything. Okay. Yeah, so not seeing that anyone has signed up to speak on that, I'll make a motion to grant the deferral to the January meeting.
And I'll second that motion, and just as a part of the discussion, point out that it sounds like what they're trying to do is work through and navigate some concerns from some of the adjoining property owners and neighbors. And so I think, this is not a deferral of just they're trying to defer. I think they're doing it to try to address some concerns, which is what we want. So with that, I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Ms. Williams. Aye. Mr. Goode.
Aye. Item 2, I'll read it, but it looks like the applicant's requesting the item to be removed from the agenda. So just to read it for acknowledgement on the record, it's a request from Alan O'Leary for preliminary and final plat approval for a commercial 3-lot subdivision. Am I reading that right? Tax map 89, parcel 41.14 off North James Campbell Boulevard. And the applicant has requested this item to be deferred from the agenda, so to be removed, so there's no action taken. Brings us to item 3 tonight, request from Crunk Engineering LLC for annexation with a plan of services of a 98.34 foot distance of right-of-way along Greens Mill Road and a 0.07 acre portion of tax map 51, parcel 34.03 at 2622 Poplar Knoll Drive and lot 1 of the landings at Greens Mill.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I was case planner for this particular request. This request is associated with the next 2 items as well. So the subdivision called the Landings in Greens Mill Road. If you recall, just a couple of months ago, you had a revised preliminary plat come in for this particular subdivision. This is a request that was initiated through the Murray County Highway Department that the applicant of this subdivision has carried forward on their behalf to some degree here. There are improvements in front of this subdivision. Some of you may have seen that. It involves taking the 90-degree turn out of Greens Mill Road and turning that into a roundabout situation for their entrance coming into the landings. This is a request from the county for the city to take over maintenance and ownership of this particular section. So this would be just for this section that if you drive out there, you will see that's improved, which contains about 0.63 acres of roadway. In order to accomplish getting all of the improvements, we did have to extend our city limits just a smidge there, 0.07 acres, which on adjacent property, which is the Conway property, in order to grab the entire improvement itself. That actual property of Miss Conway's, that 0.07 would come in under the base zoning of a CD3L for that. So they're not asking for a rezoning, just to fall under the default zoning for that. Inside your packet, you will see that this is within the suburban neighborhood, which is supported. The 3L is supported inside of that. as well as the review criteria of Article 8 for the annexation portion. I'll entertain any questions from the commission if they have any.
You know, I have a question, Mr. Keltner, and it's one that it really pertains to all three items. This item that we're talking about now, but my question really stems from the DRC comments on the next item on our agenda, which is an annexation, or I mean, a final plat of Phase 1B, I believe.
Yes, sir.
But the comment in there from the Murray County Highway Department basically states that they currently don't have, and let me go find it, I'm sorry. How did I pass it? Here we go. Murray County Highway Department understands a revised development agreement is being drafted for review and approval by the Murray County Highway Department with the intent to present this approved agreement to the county commission in January for a vote. So knowing that we don't have an agreed upon agreement between the Highway Department and the county yet, should we look at all three of these items once we know the end result of this, of this vote that could occur with the county commission?
Yeah, I think Planner Austin Brass has been talking with the applicant to sort out exactly what this agreement that's being discussed with the county on that.
So yeah, the comment, and Mr. Goetz, those comments that you're reading, are they from the final plat comments or the comments regarding this annexation?
Final plat.
The final plat.
Okay.
I'm sorry, they're on the next item on our agenda, so I'm
So
sorry.
I believe the confusion may have been, thank you for calling that out. So the comment that Murray County Highway Department has regarding this annexation is currently the Murray County Highway Department understands that no further information or documentation is needed from the Murray County Highway Department. Applicant should continue coordination and collaboration with the Murray County Highway Department should additional information or documentation be needed. So I believe that comment may have been a comment before this initial comment was made. Reading this comment out, it sounds like the Murray County Highway Department is okay with moving forward with the annexation. Therefore, I wouldn't see the issue they should have with the final plats.
There again, the highway department is the one that was requesting this to be annexed.
Right. Right, and I guess I'm just thinking of it from the perspective of, you know, if there's issues with it, you know, do we want to go ahead and annex something if there's potential issues with this agreement for the right-of-way access for the Phase 1B and C that we're looking at next, you know? I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking out wrong, but do we want to annex something now knowing that there could be a chance that 22 county commissioners aren't going to vote to support something? We don't know how that vote's going to go in January.
Yeah,
Once you, if I might,
Yeah, please
Chairman, if the annexation is to move forward, then it becomes the maintenance and ownership essentially of the city. So the county would not have any authority to deny the access point to Greensboro Road.
and the annexation before you is the one that's concerning the Greens Mill Road roundabout by the city taking that over. So I think the comment may have got put in
That was before.
before.
That does make more sense.
And
now.
so, exactly, the comment would not have been made with this annexation that they are okay with it if,
1B and 1C was applied for ahead of the annexation request.
Okay.
Staff had concerns about the
county's
concerns of whether or
Yeah.
not they were okay with the connection and things of that nature. That's when the annexation, so we held back 1B and 1C.
Mm-hmm.
And so the comments you're seeing are from that 1B and 1C, and then then the annexation request came forward.
And I apologize for blending the three.
No, it's perfectly
You
fine.
know, it was-
I can see now why now.
Yeah.
So Mr. McKee made that comment a month earlier on those plats, but that's why you're not seeing it on the annexation portion. That came after.
Okay. The only other question I had was just pertaining to one of the comments from the Murray County School Board that says that basically the roundabout is not school bus friendly. The radius is too tight. Maybe an engineer question, but maybe get a comment back on that just to get some clarification. I mean, I've personally driven out there. It's about the largest roundabout I've ever been around. So, I mean, don't know what too tight of a radius would mean there.
Right, yeah, the radius is designed to accommodate buses, trucks, fire apparatus. There is a mountable apron that the rear wheels may get up on if they're making more than a 180-degree turn on it, but it will handle.
Okay.
Does
So-
does it have that stone wall like the the one there on Green. That's all the way around it. See that?
No, this one is fairly flush. There is a center island, but it's very low.
Yeah.
So then staff thinks that there's no issues or no concerns with doing, reviewing this annexation, Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Coleman.
Apologize for the confusion. We probably should have removed that comment.
No. It was in
Previous
the, it was in the
comments.
next item on our agenda to discuss anyway. So.
I was going to ask, I mean, I guess, if the school said this, I don't want us to be dismissive of what they are saying. I mean, do we have, is there any way to confirm? Are we able to confirm?
We have turn templates on the design of it.
Okay.
That shows. I mean, we purposely, that was one of the concerns of the county at the initial design, was they have a large agricultural traffic and things of that nature, and wanted to make sure that it could meet all of those terms.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
So I want to ask Mr. Keltner a question. So in the summary for the project, so we're looking at 0.63 acre for this request.
Yes, ma'am.
But we need the 0.07
Yes, ma'am.
to accomplish the necessary land to do this. Explain that again.
Sure, and understandable, that could be a little confusing. So we can continue annexation of city property. We can continue as long as it's contiguous to it. What we ran into is there's a section that there's no city limits on either side of some of the road improvement.
Okay.
So we needed to slide the city limits slightly to, I guess that would be the northwest, which is Miss Conway's property, which is about 50 feet. And that then puts the city limits on at least one side of the roadway, so then we can go ahead and annex the road itself. So Mr. Tishers is saying that we have to be on at least one side of the road in order to accept the road.
Okay, but we're not doing a zone modification.
No,
We're
ma'am.
coming in exactly, because otherwise I have another question.
Yes, ma'am, it's coming
Okay,
in at
it's not-
3L,
Okay,
yeah, which is a rule 100-foot wide lot,
that's gonna,
2 density units per acre.
okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Does that mean for the definition of contiguous for purposes of annexation purposes, sorry for the repetition of purpose, that if the property is, there's a road that runs through the two properties, then they're still considered contiguous for purposes of annexation? And I know that's not necessarily what we're talking about here, but it sounds like what you're saying is that we needed more to touch the.
City limits, yes, sir. So we need the city limits to be at least on one side of that road.
So if the city limits is on one side of the road, and again, this is a different example, I apologize for the digression, and then there's a non-city property on the other side of the road, if that non-city property wanted to annex, even though there's a road that comes through it, are they considered to be contiguous to the city?
Well, actually, it's interesting. So state law says if you're on both sides of that road, then it's automatically our road. We don't even have to go through the process. That automatically our
Okay.
ownership.
All right. So that's interesting. But now, what about on my question? Would it be considered contiguous if a non-city property requested annexation and the only adjacent portion was a property that was across the road, across the street?
It's interesting that you brought that up. If I understand correctly, talking with Tim, because we've had something come up that's not a road, but it's a different utility. You can go across roads and annex. But certain other real utilities come up that we're not for sure that we can do that. But a road, yes. Yes.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, I make the motion to approve.
And I'll make it to second.
Have a motion and a second by Dr. Martin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Goode.
Aye. Item passes. Next item on our agenda, number 4, is the request from Crunk Engineering LLC for final plat approval with surety in the amount of $440,000 for the landings at Greens Mill PUD subdivision phase 1B, located off Greens Mill Road and consisting of 40 lots, 1 open space, and including right-of-way dedication and easements on 10.5 acres at tax map 51, parcel 55.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. This final plat meets the standards of the preliminary final PUD master plan that we approved back in July of 2024. In addition, this final plat does show the 73-foot building line at the minimum building line. We had that discussion at a previous planning commission meeting. It looks like the 73 feet at the building line will be for lots 1065 to 1070 and 1014 to 1012. But we did agree at a previous meeting that the 73 feet per the PUD standard can be measured at the minimum building line and not at the right-of-way line.
And that was a total of how many lots? It was very few.
In this particular case, it's lots number 1065 to lots 1070 and lots 1012 to 1014.
Yeah. And this is the item, Mr. Brass, that actually had the November DRC comments that I was talking about. So it was on the November
That's right.
DRC report is where the Maury County Highway Department had that statement, was regarding to the Highway Department's development agreement was being drafted for review and wouldn't be voted
Yes,
until
sir.
January. So right
No,
now, we don't know other than it's just being reviewed is the status that we know about that.
Again, based off the previous vote with the annexation, the Highway Department has stated that they were okay with that annexation concerning the road. So I do not believe the development agreement with the county is a purpose point at this stage.
Okay, so by annexing that, there's no need for a development agreement?
You got it. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Because now we're annexing it into the city, so the city's taking responsibility and maintenance of it.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yes, sir.
Any questions or comments?
Motion approved.
Second.
Sorry, we have a motion by the mayor, second by Mr. Coleman. Just for discussion, I may just add to that if I can, or ask the mayor if he wants to add to the subject, any technical comments?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Subject to any technical comments for that motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Second that? Thank you. Is that any other discussions? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Item passes. Next item tonight's item 5, request from Crunk Engineering LLC for final plat approval with surety in the amount of $330,000 for the landings at Greens Mill PUD subdivision phase 1C, located off Greens Mill Road and consisting of 27 lots, right-of-way and easements on a 6.67 acre portion of tax map 51, parcel 55.
Thank you, Mr. Goetz. Again, this final plat does meet the standards of the final PUD master plan. With this particular final plat, it looks like lot number 1104 out of 27 lots is the one where the 73 feet will be measured at the minimum building line.
And so other than that, it meets all other standards.
Yes, sir, it does.
And I'll make a motion to approve, subject to all technical comments.
Second.
Have a second by Ms. Shannon. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Item passes. Brings us to item 6 on the agenda. Due to a professional relationship with the applicant or with the owner, I think I'll abstain or recuse myself on that one. I'll hand it over to Mr. Coleman to run item 6. If that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 6, request from John Clark for alternative compliance architectural design review approval at 2904 Casey Lane, being tax map 112, parcel 4.04. Staff?
Yeah, thank you for the, thank you to all the members of the planning commission, being here tonight, applicants present as well. This is at 2904 Casey Lane. This is the Trotwood Retail Center, that has been constructed. As you can see in that picture, that's displayed right there, 7,500 square foot commercial retail strip center. Situated on the corner of Trotwood and Casey Lane, Casey being a collector. The main frontage is facing Casey Lane there. Upon inspection, I did the inspection on site, and upon inspection, I noticed that the architecture had changed from the previously approved May 2022 design that was approved by our architectural review team in May of 2022. It's changed as such, and if you'll display the next picture there for me. It's changed as such that if you'll notice on the bottom of the pilasters there's cast stone. That was specifically called out during the previous review, May of 2022, as well as the stone medallion at the top of the pilasters and the brick rollout course that runs the entirety of the facade across the front, specifically facing Casey Lane. All of that has not been constructed, and in its place you have the previous building that now sits constructed. I did speak with the applicant upon my site inspection. They advised that they could not get the materials there. This has been brought before the Planning Commission for alternative compliance. Typically, landscaping, if the Planning Commission decides to review the alternative compliance and gives approval, alternatives to the design not being met as approved could be landscaping, could be a change in the materials that is now constructed. An applicant is requesting that. Once again, the building is already constructed. The brick or the cast stone on the pilasters at the very bottom. We did speak with the building official earlier in the day, and it's not unachievable, but it could be done correctly. You'd have to remove that section there and replace it with a cast stone. The soldier course would be something that would be easier to deal with construction-wise. But once again, it's at the Planning Commission's discretion. Additional landscaping could be accomplished facing Casey Lane. There's a detention pond. This was viewed initially under Ordinance 3638, and in your packet as well, you'll see the standard that was looked at upon the review of this, and it was Section 6.1.6 Building Facade Standards. And in 3638, all facades shall be constructed of one or a combination of the following materials: concrete aggregate, stucco, brick, stone, glass, wood, faced concrete block. No portion of the building constructed of unadorned, unfaced concrete masonry units or corrugated and or sheet metal shall be used. Monolithic buildings are prohibited. No single facade extending unbroken more than approximately 35 feet in a horizontal plane. It goes on further. Compliance may be obtained through the following: the use of projections or recesses, which is articulation, and then the use of architectural detail to provide visual interest, including but not limited to columns, large windows, entryways, beams, posts. Upon my review of this, and my staff analysis covers it well, but I'll hit some high points here. I think that the review of the original design that was presented to the architectural review team in May of 2022 showed a facade that certainly spoke to the frontage in direct relation to the building facade standards in 6.1.6, with the details being the stone medallion, the cast stone at the base of the pilasters, and then the soldier course at the top. Since that has been removed, you have, in essence, a structure that now meets the current standards as far as materials and articulation. Even under the 3638, it meets that with the recesses and the pilasters and the distinction between the two faces in the building. However, I do believe that the removal of those details, those elements, certainly speaks to the overall design and the frontage aesthetic from Casey Lane and from Trotwood. Once again, it's close intersection. It's close to the intersection of Trotwood and Casey Lane. But I welcome any questions that the Planning Commission may have, and also the applicant is present as well. So thank you.
So I do have two speakers, one being the owner and applicant. So since the owner and applicant, should we go ahead and have them up 3 minutes or should we? Okay. All right. So the first individual I have is Mr. Bobby Patel. If you mind coming up and just mention your name and address.
Yes, sir. My name is Bobby Patel, and I'm from 2904 Casey Lane, Columbia, Tennessee. So the whole reason why we did that, because it was after COVID, and that such a brick and the stones that require on the drawing. So what happened was, like, there was only 6 companies in the U.S. They makes that, but due to the COVID, they shut down, and we have timeline for like 4 to 6 months to get those stones and that bricks and everything. But the problem was, like, we had won the liquor license through the city of Columbia, and somehow or another we have 365 days to working days to get that open. So either if I chase behind that liquor license, do I need to let that go or get this building ready? Either or. But, we lose on the both sides. So we decided, hey, to speed up the process, let's get what's available. And we did that. And technically we lose that liquor license as well, because it could not be get it done in 365 days. So here we are.
So I'm sorry. So you said you did lose the license?
Yes, we did. Yes, sir. We was the first one in 2 years ago, because according to the city of Columbia, that if we want the liquor license, we has to be approved. We has to be ready within 365 working days. That is close to impossible in city of Columbia to be get that any constructions done. And the city of Columbia, the planning commission takes literally over 6 to 8 months to approve the design and everything. So there is 2 other applicant after us. They're probably going to lose their license as well. And the third challenge I'm going to have. So we have our liquor store on the Nashville Highway, 1113, as everybody know. That we are in a court with Mr. Hunt that coming 20 of this month, and our lease is already done. So he's going to kick me out in January. So I don't have nowhere to go. So I'm asking, all of you guys, if you can, I don't know, you can see what can be done.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious. So you said that it was the material. Your soldier rows are essentially it's brick. It's what you have there now, just in a different pattern.
Yes, sir.
What was the reason to not follow that?
I got my cousin right here that he can give you a little bit more idea on that. If you want to talk to him.
That's fine. Go ahead.
So the material that we have got right now that we put on, it's similar to that other brick, but it was going to be hard to put it in that way. So for those reasons, we couldn't make it work. And then we couldn't make it work, and then time crunch, so we had to go all the way up to the top with the same look and the layout.
Was there any communication between you and Mr. Archibald about these struggles that you were encountering? And Mr. Patel, if you'd like to come up and speak anymore.
No, so at that time we didn't know that we had to go through this process and ask the planning commissioner or ask the planning, whoever is going to come take a look at it. So we didn't know that. And that's why we're in this situation. Otherwise, we would have followed the proper guidance and talked to him before doing that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and I do have, or Mr. Is that L. Eshke? Was that you who just spoke, or I have another individual, L. Eshke?
We can't read the handwriting.
Yeah, sorry, we're unable to read the handwriting, but
It may not be on the slide.
ESHKE, but we're guessing that. Anybody here? Sounds familiar? Does anybody else sign up to talk about this? No? Okay. All right, so you've heard from the applicant and Mr. Archibald. I'd like to, I guess, open up a discussion in terms of, I can see obviously some difficulty with maybe turnaround times and things like that, especially with the way that logistics have been going since the pandemic. But just interested in kind of what everyone else's thoughts are on the process, and really staff, if you feel like there's a process, is there enough time allowed for these types of things? Not enough time? I mean, is this ever happened? This is the first time it's happened for me since I've been on planning commission.
If you're asking me in relation to the liquor license?
Well, I mean, they do relate, right? So if construction has to happen within a certain period of time, the liquor license, has a time limit on it as well. Do those things come in conflict?
Well, that may be a little bit outside of this item, but I can tell you that I've yet to see the allowance of the new liquor license. I've yet to see an applicant that would reasonably be able to meet that time frame. So when they were awarded that, they were not going to meet that time. They had no approvals on site plans. All the rest of them have no approvals on site plans. So they're 3 to 4 months already gone, just in trying to get designs, approvals, permits, and starting construction. I haven't seen one yet, but this one is more about you have an architectural review team that approved a certain design. They moved forward with a design that is different. That was not expressed. There was processes that we could have done to maybe look at this at the time it was being modified. That may have been a little bit easier to do now instead of after.
And apologize for the digression. I know the architect on the commission has a question that's probably far more pertinent, but let me just go back to your point on the approval and the liquor store. And I know it's a little bit of apples and oranges here, because on the one hand, they're saying that it was because of their time crunch that they cut the proverbial corner, so to speak. But on the other hand, it also sounds like it was a material issue. But in any event, Paul, you said that we've yet to see an applicant succeed on that time frame that they're under. So are we just setting folks up for failure in that regard? Do we need to revisit that? And maybe that's a future conversation that council needs to have?
I think it's a conversation for council. If the applicant is going to be constructing a new building to put that use in, and they have not actually started the process when they obtained that allowance by the city to have the store there, then it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to meet that, even with the 3-month extension.
And it's difficult to envision. Well, I guess you could envision that an applicant may submit an application when they already have an ongoing building project in place. But in a lot of cases, such as perhaps this one, the anchor tenant or the impetus to the construction in the first place was the liquor store itself.
Yes, sir. Each license that's been given out by city council has been to a site that is green with no approvals on it.
So will a liquor store be going in one of these parcels?
Not I'm aware of. I'm not sure who's got the license now.
Yes, we are moving our existing liquor store from.
They have, that's right, they're existing.
Because they have an existing
That's
license
right.
and they're going to
Yeah.
transfer,
It's
and
not
they
a
are
new-
able to do that.
Right.
Okay. I'll defer to the architect. I may have a couple other questions after the architect
Mr. Sloan?
speaks.
I think, so I was on the architectural review team whenever this came through. And in the past, we've seen a lot of issues with not getting what we expect. And I think that's kind of the overarching issue, right? Like you look at the rendering, you look at, like we ask applicants to bring us what they expect it to be, whether that's a 3D rendering or a line drawing. And so I think the overarching issue is it's not what you expected, right? Like this is not what was approved. So step one is like, what do you do about it? And is there a processes in between or a review like a midway through just to double check that they're good to go with what was approved? Outside of that, this in particular instance, if you go back, if you were to scrap what was approved and look at this for what it is right now, our code has, and the code that it was approved under has a requirement of a base middle cap. The materials on this building are approved. They're approvable materials. I think they have the brick on all 4 sides, which is important. There's articulation of a 35-foot maximum on the facade, which is also important. The one item that is tricky, like you could say it has a base, they change a brick material at the base. It's clearly got a middle. And the awnings, I think, are a nice touch, but it doesn't really have a cap per se, unless we were like perceive the metal coping, which I would not perceive that to be a cap of a building. So that's what I would do if I was in somebody else's shoes on this commission, is to look at this as like reviewable today, right? Because obviously we can't go back in time and tell them to change a rendering, because that does nothing for us. It's how can you look at this? I think it needs a cap.
And I'm glad to know that I'm on the same page as an architect, because I think, to me, on two levels. Number one, obviously this is disappointing. I mean, there's no question that, the final product is not what we approved and anticipated, and we, can't allow that to sort of take precedence for future projects, lest we find ourselves dealing with these issues over and over again, and or people take advantage, which I don't think that's what I'm hearing occurred here. I think it was a combination of factors that led to this scenario that you're in. That's an unfortunate one, but we have to look forward and figure out a solution instead of, being critical. But to me, the Soldier Row or the Soldier Course or whatever it's called, Soldier Course Row or Soldier Row Course, sounds like maybe that's also not feasible. But there certainly would there not be some element of a cap material that could be placed on top to just sort of give it a finished look, recognizing that may be a little bit easier than this cast stone, which would require taking off brick and putting additional stone on. So I think I'm on the side of would like to see some type of capping, whether or not it be requiring the Soldier Course, if that could still be done, and then also go into the landscaping. I mean, I think from the city's perspective, given that this is not the product that was initially approved, we need to maximize whatever leverage we have. And if we have some leverage to have some landscaping improvements now added on in exchange for sort of finding the happy medium, I would like to see some landscaping enhancements as a part of this requirement. Given that they're under the old ordinance, our old ordinance is different with regards to our new ordinance with regards to landscape improvements. Right, Mr. Keltner?
Yes, sir, to some degree, yes, sir.
And I mean, I was just the reason I asked that question, I was trying to figure out, is there an easy way to just basically force them to adhere to the new code's landscaping requirements as a part of the approval? Would that change, or do we need to get more specific with that in terms of, landscaping along the Casey Lane frontage that right now I don't think that they're going to do, but that we could require as a part of this motion?
Right. I think I would focus on the street itself. So they do have it's next to residential, so it's got a pretty good buffer already between those two uses. The Casey Lane and the side street there, they are just your standard street tree type of look there. So that's where I would focus if you were looking for more landscaping to be in those two areas. It was under 3638. So in 3638, you had opacity ratings. 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, that kind of thing, all the way up to 1, which you can't see through it. If you went to a 0.4, that would add in some more accent trees and some shrubs through there. They would be able to count most of the existing trees that are planted already toward that, but it would fill it in just a little bit more for you.
Is there any on ground like shrubbery or hedge that could also be required, that just takes some of the facade, particularly the parking area, out of sight?
Actually, the parking on this one is behind the building now.
So that's just for clarification purposes of the planning commission, that picture that you see right there is actually the rear. That one is actually the rear of the structure. So the front of the structure is much closer to Casey Lane.
That's right.
There's a detention pond in the front.
Yeah.
You've got about a 3-foot elevation change.
Yep.
So landscaping there, I agree that the opacity, I think you could change the opacity
So you
100%, but the elevation is not going It's not going to really do anything for the facade due to the elevation to where it comes down to street grade. Because there's a 3-foot increase, I think, uphill to the front of that building.
You had to put on the rim of the detention pond.
Mm-hmm.
Mr.
Ms. Williams.
So, is it gonna be 4 different in there? No?
There's 4 suites. The liquor store occupies 2 spaces.
And where do they plan to? In the original rendering, it looked like there was more room. Every, that space towards. But I think the signage might be really important since they ripped down all the detail.
Well, the signage that I've looked at for these different businesses that are going in these different suites through permit review show on the face of the building.
On the brick or on the glass?
On the in the middle portion above the awning.
Could we? With this really basic.
With that, I assume that staff will be working with them to make sure that it's placed appropriately, correct?
Most certainly, it'd have to meet our sign ordinance per our zoning. It'd have to meet our sign ordinance per our zoning or sign standards per our zoning ordinance. And I have looked at a couple of those suites. There's actually 2 other businesses that's already been, the signage has already been approved. But you are correct, Ms. Williams. Signage is a prominent feature on the face of this building. But they do meet the standards. The signage does meet the standards.
The standard, because the signing ordinance is contained within our zoning ordinance, right?
That's correct.
So it meets the standards of our prior ordinance, which do we have an opportunity here to enhance the requirements regarding the sign standards? Because if so, again, I want to utilize whatever leverage we have here to sort of put Humpty Dumpty back together with regards to the things that were not done. So could we, as a part of the approval for this, which I want to figure out a solution, but require them to adhere to an enhanced signage requirements?
Well, you're reviewing the sign ordinance 4400, right?
That's correct.
So it'd be under our new ordinance.
Oh, so they're subject to the old ordinance for the approval of the project, but they're subject to the new ordinance for the signing?
Because it was originally approved under the old ordinance.
Okay.
The building as a whole
Good
was
deal. So
originally.
we've already solved that problem.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Martin.
So, Mr. Chairman, well, you're not, okay, Mr. Coleman.
It's me.
Vice Chair.
Vice Chair, thank you, Mr. Keltner. It's been a long year. So at this point for me, I'm disappointed that we were not communicated with. I have to say that. This is traumatizing. We had something that was approved, and here we are. I don't want anybody else coming before us thinking they can do this, because it takes 2 seconds to send an email and say, we couldn't get, and I appreciate the explanation, the items from 6 companies in the U.S. to do this, and 4 to 6 months, and liquor license and everything else that we're dealing with, and leases, closing and all of that. But I don't like being in this position that we're trying to, as the mayor says, to fix it. And we really want to fix it because it's in Columbia and it is commercial and it is our city. Okay, I have reason to go by Casey Lane all the time. And so I've been trying to figure out what was the front of the building because of the detention pond and the parking spaces behind here, and where am I going in at? So, with all that we're talking about, this was concerning to me from the get-go because I have watched this come out of the ground. So I think that whatever we can do to make sure that this is as close to what the city of Columbia requires, then that's what this council needs to do. Now, that's just me. I got one vote up here. But the detention pond being close to Casey Lane, what are you going to do to make that look good when you've got NHC transition, a major development? You've got the service facility that's just been opened, that's getting ready to be open across the street. You got all this going on. You got homes out there. You got a church right there. What are we going to do to make sure this gets to our best possible product? Because I am disappointed in this. It takes 2 seconds to write an email. So I'm going to hear what the rest of the group has to say.
Thank you, Dr. Martin.
May I, Mr. Vice Chair?
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Shannon.
I might have missed it, Mr. Archibald, and I do apologize if I did. Which side of the building do they intend to place these signs? The Casey Lane side or the front side?
Casey Lane side.
So there'll be signs on the rear, actual rear of the building facing Casey Lane, identifying what each suite will hold.
It's a double front.
It's a double front.
Yeah.
Because it's got the
Yeah.
doors on the front.
That's correct, yes. So there's doors,
On both
there's
sides.
storefronts on the front as
So you
well.
can put
So
them on that side also.
you can, yes, sir.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Mm-hmm.
My question for staff would be, is whether or not, how much does this request fall short of what you guys think is the best way forwards?
Well, I mean, I can speak to it. Mr. Keltner's addressed some of the concern there with the maybe adding an opacity there around the detention area. That would at least give some street screen for the purposes of the bottom of the elevation that now lacks the definitive base with the cast stone on the pilasters. And then opinion of staff, I do think I would agree with the commission that a cap needs to be added, whether it be a soldier course, as was previously approved, in addition to the landscaping. That was certainly more defined base, middle, and cap of that building, along with the pilasters and the recess that you have. I don't know if Mr. Sloan agrees with me on that, but I think he spoke of the at least the cap on the top. It'd make it more definitive for the architecture of the building. Right now, the way it's constructed, and just for clarification purposes, when this came through on the building permit side, what they showed us was the design that was approved. What they built was what is constructed. So this was not noticed by staff until final inspection. At which time,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is at that point when they submitted the previous design, was this structure already standing?
no, that was during the permit review process.
Okay, all right,
So-
sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah, it was during the permit review process. So what they submitted was truly what they got approved for. What they constructed was not close, missing those elements that we spoke about already. But staff's opinion would be that additional landscaping along both frontages, Casey Lane and the side street, I can't remember the side street, would help, as well as, defining the cap. Which, once again, we did speak with the building official earlier, and that would be the least intrusive to the design of the building versus changing the cast stone, changing the brick at the bottom pilasters to cast stone.
So just to recap, make sure, is capping, landscaping on both frontages, and then capacity around the detention area? Were those?
That's correct, and that would be included in the landscape, and it would be dependent on what the commission so chose to choose as the opacity that's needed to make that work. If you're looking under 3638, it's going to have different levels, as Mr. Keltner pointed out, but that would be the commission's discretion.
As far as the opacity percentage?
That's correct, yes, on what y'all would like to see there.
I mean, I would defer to staff on that sort of thing, but other people on this commission may have stronger opinions.
Mr. Keltner pointed out what the, I think it was .4.
Yeah, 0.4.
.4 would be the most appropriate, probably in those locations.
So, I guess I'm trying to think of the best way to proceed. Would it just be to create a motion and amend it, or does this need to be worked out further between the applicant and staff?
Well, essentially, we're holding the final inspection, the certificate of occupancy of the building, and they're requesting to modify this elevation. If you want to modify the elevation with conditions, then you could approve it that way, subject to those conditions, and staff would still hold the certificate of occupancy until those conditions were met. So if you want to modify, then you would be approving the request, but only sounds like maybe some of the requests that you would approve and some portions you would.
So we can amend and then approve that if that's how we want to proceed. Amend, then approve, or is I guess what's the best route? Would it be to do that, or would it be to have them come back with a?
It's up to the commission. If you feel as though you're comfortable amending it to modify the elevation, then that's what you would be doing. What conditions you put on it is what parts you want to modify and which parts you want to leave in.
Okay. Right. So I'll entertain motions.
If I can interject
More comments?
a little
Go
bit.
ahead, please.
So one thing to keep in mind is if we ask them to provide a cap, like if we want them to have a cap, we probably need to wait and see what they can do and what that is, because a verbal motion, or you saying something and me saying something and Mayor Mulder saying something, we're all going to think something different, and we might be right back here in the same place, not knowing what to expect. So I think if cap is anywhere in that motion and wanting them to provide a cap on this, we need to see a drawing. We need to see what that can be so that we're all on the same page.
At that point, you'd be deferring.
Yeah, and I think, and Mr. Keltner, I know you and I have had a lot of conversations about the pitfalls that you enter into when you provide some type of contingent approvals and or a CO, and then a requirement that something be met in the future, because then you might find yourself in a situation that we find ourselves in tonight, which is, they're sort of past the point of going back, and how do we remedy it? And at that point, we have very little leverage, because once they're granted their CO, then
That's right.
But with that said, is this maybe one of those rare exceptions if there is some desire, recognizing that they're apparently going to be out of their liquor store January, and that if we defer it, then this is going to delay that. This building has been sitting sort of idle for a number of months now, since it's been substantially completed as a result of these issues. And I think, it would be good to see this building be finished out and have its occupancy and creating some opportunities for retail in this corridor. Could we move forward with a motion that would require the landscaping enhancements and the landscaping enhancements and the capping to occur, if the capping is something that might not necessarily hold up the CO, in other words, doing exactly what you've advised against in the past, because that capping, perhaps we do want to see it, next month, but I would hate for the capping to be something that delayed them from their ability to open up their retails.
Well, you could have it to match the original drawing.
Or do you guys do temp COs? Okay. Because that would have been, if life safety, if nothing in the building is, people can get out of the building and then fire alarm works and electricity works and whatever. Yeah. And that's kind of where.
Yeah, if we could do that, then.
We're back in the same spot.
Well, we've been advised against that. I guess I would just ask the applicant in that case, Mr. Patel, is if we're, if we agree to relent on this cast stone issue and the pilasters and the things that would require you to take brick off and put in new, is the soldier course something that could be, that y'all could do, that y'all could still do at this point?
I mean, not sure how it's going to affect the what do you call it? It's like a
Solar course at the top of the.
yes.
So if we
Cool.
So if we remove that, then we're basically taking out the vapor barrier that's behind. So it's going to damage all that building material. In order for us to do that, we can put a cap on top of that because we have a cap that's a metal cap on top of it, which is matching the storefront color. It's a bone color, so that's why it's hard to see. But we can put something on top of that if that's something that.
So that cap that's on there now is a metal cap?
Yes, sir. It's a metal cap with the TPO wrapped all the way around.
Considered a coping. It's part of the roof system.
You just
Yes.
reattach the paper. I mean,
Yeah, you just reattach the vapor barrier. As far as
Yeah.
construction
We can-
goes, you
It's
just
just
reattach
Yeah.
the vapor barrier.
Because we take that off and then we'd have to take the brick course off and then put a new one in and then vapor barrier in that and cap it back in place. So
So essentially, I mean, again, we only have the chance to get this right once, and
Yes.
we don't have it right now. So,
Yes.
now we have a chance to remediate it that can placate this commission, but can also get you your CO and get you up and running, which is what I think we want. So to me, is the soldier course something that you can do, recognizing it's going to take a sacrifice, but also recognizing it's going to take a sacrifice to get approval by this commission, considering that you've done something not in accordance with the plans? And if that's the case, then I would make a motion that the subject to the soldier course being added on as originally presented in the original plan, and subject to a 0.4% opacity at the detention pond area, and subject to communication between the applicant and staff relative to these items, including signage going forward, and also subject to the addition of trees, or is that the opacity?
Yes.
That takes the opacity piece. Okay, so with that said, that'll be my motion to amend the elevation, subject to those points.
Did we get you started asking a question. Were you going to wait?
Well, I mean, I think I don't. Maybe I didn't let him answer on the soldier course. I thought I got an affirmative that you could. It just wasn't necessarily something that you wanted to do, or that might create an additional expense. And
yeah, that is going to create some additional expense.
right, and I think at this
And
point,
time.
considering all things, I mean, the capping and the finalizing the capping as approved originally is something that you still can do. I don't necessarily want this motion to be one that has to be done before they can get their CO, though. So is that possible?
I don't know how to do that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So your motion includes the soldering or the capping as originally presented. There's the second image that they submitted, which was their revised image or their revised elevation. Have y'all seen that one?
Mr. Shannon, I'll speak to that. The architect in question couldn't put that soldier course on there. The original approved elevation does show the soldier course. I had that discussion with him. So it might not be shown on that second elevation, but
Absolutely, and that's what I was getting at. So on this original elevation, you've got soldiers from left to right, front to back, right? And
Yes, sir.
on this secondary elevation, they submitted the updated elevation they submitted. The soldering is only on the main pillars, not across the entire rooftop.
that's correct.
They're actually above the base roof line, which means they would not interfere with the roofing or the coping that's on that material.
That's correct.
So if the
The original elevation that was approved showed the soldier course, and it distinguished the cap,
right,
middle, and base.
right.
And that's why it was there. This updated elevation, I spoke with the architect, the one that submitted this, spoke with him via phone because I questioned that myself.
Yeah.
And his reply was that in his drawing program, he couldn't accomplish that task. So
No,
that's what was
exactly.
presented.
I think the drawing concept of it is fine. What I was getting at is if this is acceptable to the commission, now you're not removing too much coping and too much roofing material. You're only removing these certain sections that would require a soldering course if this was approved by the commission. Does that make sense? Mr. Keltner, have I thrown you through a loop?
No, sir, I do believe, I understand what you're saying, but in order to get to that level of the soldier row, they will need to remove that coping off and then take the brick down. So it'll be a few rows of brick that would come off, then they would put in the soldier row, add a few rows of brick back, coping back.
But just on the pillars is what I'm getting at.
Oh, I see what you're saying, not on the wall section.
Correct.
I can say that between the.
Yes, that's what I was getting.
I see what you're
If we
saying.
went with the original design, you're talking the entire perimeter of the building. If we went with their
Yeah, I see what you're
updated
saying.
elevation, you're only dealing with
see what you
portions of the roof.
Let me go back.
But Mr. Archibald, is that what you said, that the architect said he couldn't figure out how to
That's correct. In his drawing program, whatever he uses,
drawings.
So
Yeah.
not,
it's just, that's a rendered design.
so
That's
it
correct.
could be done, just he couldn't get it drawn in his.
That's correct. In his, whatever program he was using, that's what he conveyed to me.
He did the work quite a few years ago, so he just didn't.
He probably took the old design and tried to mimic that design, and in the program that he's working in, it just didn't work out right. But he did the original design, so he knows that the soldier course went the entire elevation.
Is there a motion? Is there a motion on the table?
There is a motion.
Okay.
Well,
So
Was there a motion?
so
I mean,
after I
I-
was clarifying the mayor's motion.
I thought we were ready to move forward. You asked for a motion. I'm happy to withdraw my motion if somebody wants to better articulate it, and or I can start over.
I would second with a tweak. So I think when you said soldier at the top, what you meant to say was the brick detailing as originally proposed at the top of that building. There's multiple terms for brick coursing. There's soldiers and headers and so there's multiple courses of brick at the top, at the cap of that create that cap look of the original design. And I don't know if we're going to do it when you're going to do it. We're setting a precedent in a way that, when you come back here, tail between your legs, and you're like, well, we didn't do what we said we were going to do. So what are you guys going to do about it? So my thought is, if we're going to take off the cap, we're going to ask them to take off that parapet cap, the metal coping all the way around the building. Just do it. Do the whole thing as it was originally approved, with the soldier courses in between the pilasters, and then the brick detailing at the top of those column pilasters. So I would second with that articulation.
So then are we clear then to staff? Are we clear on Mayor Muller's motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there was a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
All right, and then now that we're on discussion, just to make sure I'm clear and so the applicant's clear, and maybe we're all clear. So what we're doing is we're okaying the fact that the cast stone and some of those components were not done as you presented it. And even though you presented a project to us that included that was approved and went through multiple layers of review and approval, we're saying, okay, fine, you didn't do that. We're going to look past that. But in exchange for that, we are going to require this capping as approved under the original elevation, which is going to require some work on your part, but that will ultimately lead to a better, more aesthetically pleasing product. And that was originally approved, part of that original plan. And then also make you, or a request that you add to the opacity to provide some additional landscaping buffer that you otherwise would not have had to have done had the architectural components of this elevation been formed, as it was presented and approved originally. But I go back to the question of, okay, Mr. Keltner, so if this motion is approved, first of all, this is their final stop. I mean, they're ready to move forward with regards to the opacity issues and their capping. But I mean, are they going to just have to get to work and come and get that done, and then come and through the inspector process to get their CO and their permitting?
Yes, sir. Once the work complete, they can request inspection.
And is there no way, I mean, without setting a dangerous precedent that I know you've been very careful about over the years, and I've come to appreciate, is there any way, I mean, because I don't have any idea of how long that kind of project will entail. I mean, especially given the time of year. And I'd like to get them the ability to get up and going as quick as possible. Can we, let them proceed? Considering there is no life safety issues, this is more an aesthetic requirement for their failure to adhere to the original plan. I know I've said that several times, but again, I mean, we're trying to bend over backwards here. And can we make it such that it has to be done by a certain date that would allow them to go ahead and get there?
No, so nothing. I mean, landscaping, we do have some abilities with landscaping, but this is actually a pretty good time of year to be putting that in.
The landscaping?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I'm not as worried about landscaping, obviously, as the other issue.
It's the only thing that I'm aware of that we have the ability to say, yes, you can move in, but this component can still be done at a later time.
Landscaping is?
Yes, sir.
I'd also like
Due to weather hardship, but
I'd also like to let the planning commission know that staff has been working, maybe not specifically with this applicant for a build out, but all permits for spaces have been reviewed, conditioned, revisions made, and approved. So the build out of those spaces have already moved forward. So the only holdup is for the shell building itself. It had to come in as a separate permit. So they have been moving forward. But the shell building can't be approved and no final COs will be released on those build outs until this issue is resolved.
So they're moving forward with the permitting and the build out of the spaces, and they can continue to do that.
That's correct,
And then
yes.
ultimately, the final CO would come only after they have it completed, subject to the original elevation.
That's correct.
Okay, so it sounds like that's probably the best we could do for them regarding that, is that they still are moving forward with their build outs, but they're going to have that capping complete before the CO. So that, I mean, I mean, okay. I think that's all I have to say about that. I don't accept any other
Okay, so
discussion.
we do have a motion and a second, so we're in discussion. So, Doctor.
Okay, so who's gonna walk this through? Who on staff is gonna make sure that this is happening? Who is
Mr.
that?
Archibald, looks
Mr.
like.
Archibald, you've got this covered.
Yes, ma'am. Whatever the planning commission rules on and makes as the approval on this, staff will make sure that it takes place.
And so it's several ideas and heads working up here as far as a commission. When you talk about that buffering on that detention pond that's facing Casey Lane,
Yes, ma'am.
we need to make sure that that's handled well.
Yes, ma'am.
Cause that's major traffic. That's major. You guys, I mean, okay.
The 0.4% opacity
0.4, okay.
that has been motioned, I think is going to successfully do the job.
Okay.
And staff will make sure that is on site before.
All right, before we take the vote, I was going to say I'm really proud of this planning commission for figuring this out, because when I first read this, I was like, man, what is our recourse here? So I think that this is a good opportunity just to consider, like, some of our various processes that are in different departments may have some conflict, which, a smaller developer like we're dealing with now versus larger developer. Larger developer has more resources, more capacity to handle some of these things. Smaller developer would not, which is a small business. So I just think it's worth noting before we move on from this, that so we don't encounter things like this again, is considering how our processes may stress the others. Obviously, there was communication issues. There should have been more communication from the applicant on this, but I think it's also worth noting it's easy for especially smaller organizations to get caught in between two processes and just not simply have the bandwidth to resolve it. So it's something to consider going forwards. But at that, we'll go ahead and call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Moser,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Goode.
Motion passes, and I will hand the gavel back over to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. It's going to bring us to item 7 on our agenda tonight. Request from T-Square Engineering for final plat approval with surety in the amount of $375,000 for Carter Station West Phase 3, consisting of 60 lots on a 14.88 acre portion of tax map 41, parcel 15.05 off Fellowship Road.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So if you recall, back in October, there was a revised preliminary plat on this particular subdivision, and this is a follow-up to that approval. So as you stated, this is a final plat. It will be for 61 single-family homes within this development. That totals 399. We have included inside of your review the subdivision Article 2 that addresses the review criteria for final plats. Staff has reviewed this item and found it to be compliant with the preliminary plat.
And this is the one, Mr. Keltner, just to be clarified, this is the one where they were wanting to put a swimming pool in a certain area next to a couple of residential lots or something like that. Advised, and I think it had maybe a three lots or so that was up next to a commercial piece or something.
That's right.
2 lots. Okay. The question I got, a couple real quick, is on the DRC report. There's an engineering comment about make sure off-site traffic improvements have been completed.
Those are complete.
Thank you, sir. That was my initial question on that. Any other questions, anyone? Seeing none, then I'll make a motion to approve, subject to all technical comments. Have a second by Mr. Coleman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Moser,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Goode.
Aye. Item passes. Brings us to item 8 on our agenda, request from Allison Corolla for preliminary and final plat approval at 1400 Hampshire Pike, being tax map 88M, Group B, parcels 7 and 7.01.
Thank you, Mr. Goetz. This is an irregular shaped parcel that's at the T intersection of Williamsport Pike and Hampshire Pike. I believe there used to be an old motorcycle shop there many, many years ago. Nevertheless, this preliminary and final plat takes multiple parcels and consolidates it into one parcel. And then the reason it is also becoming before you is there is dedication of right-of-way along Williamsport Pike and also along Hampshire Pike. Therefore, the preliminary and final plat is being handled together with this request. And this is something that in the future will be a site development plan that staff can review administratively because it is less than 10 acres and does not include a public thoroughfare through the site. And it is zoned general commercial, CD4C.
Thank you, Mr. Brass. If I remember right, there's a development or some traffic improvements that are forthcoming that will cause a red light to go there at that intersection. Does any of this help, hurt, have anything to do with the addition of that red light?
I know we did in the past with this particular site have an access management exception. It did not pass through Planning Commission, but I will defer to Mr. Harper on any overarching traffic studies here.
So the developer across the way at the Williamsport Pike will be putting the traffic signal in. This development did perform a traffic study and that improvement into their access will be off of Williamsport.
Okay. And we don't have a concept at the moment, right? We don't know what's going to go there yet. It's just a
Well, this is just a plat to combine
plat.
properties. There is inside your attachments, there is some outlines of potential uses, but we'll just wanted to stress this is just on the platting portion of it. As Austin stated, the site development plan will come administratively.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, where did you say the access to this was going to be, off of Williamsport or Hampshire?
Williamsport.
Okay, and when, if, traffic light, where is that going?
Defer that to Mr. Harper.
At the intersection of Williamsport Pike and Hampshire.
So at the V?
Yes.
It is close. It's close to the other.
That's real close to the light at Withorn and the crossover.
So there is we're doing a coordination and timing with our third-party consultant on all three of those lights. We're including Lion Parkway, Oak Springs Drive, and this future light. They are timing all those together with installation of that.
Thank you for that information.
So hopefully that'll improve some traffic
Some traffic.
flow in that area, particularly in the school hours, which I drop off every single day at that.
Yes,
it's-
and I go to work there too.
And also, folks would actually not turn right on red when the sign says "Don't turn right on red" from these hours. But I digress.
And just for clarification, when staff reviews some type of elevations or some type of proposal, I was looking at the water availability letter. It clearly states that sprinklers are going to be mandatory, I guess, due to the fire flow in that area. Applicants aware that whatever would have to go there would be required to be sprinkled. So, yeah.
Yeah, that would be reviewed at the building permit stage based off the use.
Any other discussions?
Make a motion to approve subject to technical comment.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'd like to point out, just on top of that notion, in the staff report, it also states that the final plat would need to be recorded within 60 days. That would fall under the technical comments, but just wanted to point that out as well. So, no other discussion. We'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Goode.
Aye. Item passes. Brings us to item 9, request from Julia Lannon for a preliminary plat approval of a 3-lot subdivision known as Columbia Commons at 115 South James M. Campbell Boulevard, being tax map 113E, Group B, Parcel 4.
Thank you, Mr. Goetz. This here is the former Sloan Ford site, and this preliminary plat is essentially taking one lot where the Ford site was and splitting it off into 3 parcels for future commercial uses. You will see this again as a final plat. There is a public sewer line that does run across the property as an existing condition, and that sewer line will need to be rerouted. And so there is some public infrastructure that is involved that will require a subsequent final plat. Nevertheless, this is something that staff will review administratively as a site development plan because it is less than 10 acres and does not include a new public thoroughfare. But they all meet the site dimension standards. Something I do want the commission to be aware of, this will be the first CD4C preliminary plat where we have 2 setback lines, max setback lines. There's a 40-foot max setback line that historically was always in CD4C. And as you recall, the zoning code was amended to allow an 85-foot max setback if you're utilizing 2 rows of parking in the frontage or the first layer on a public thoroughfare. So this will be the first one that does have the 2 setback lines. And please note it is just along James Campbell, not along the secondary Nicholas Long Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Brasson. I'm sure, certain that the applicant is aware then of what you pointed out with the wastewater, the sewer lines have to be improved. And I think there's even a comment in the staff report about some water improvements for the water line that has to be made as well.
That's right. It's all in the technical comments. So we've had several meetings with the developer on this because with our new code and how this is going to meet the new code. And so I do believe there are, in terms of site orientation, coming back and are going to push the new commercial uses back to the 85-foot setback line. But again, they are aware of the infrastructure improvements. And I know our wastewater engineer is also here with us. So he has been in discussion with the developer regarding the sewer infrastructure and rerouting of that.
And we will see that more in depth upon at the next step.
There will be a final plat that'll have that more in depth. Certainly the site construction plans and the sewer laterals are all reviewed internally at the staff level.
Now, I know the applicant's Julia Lannon. Give the opportunity to come forth if there's any reason to add any additional comments or anything like that, if the applicant's here. Would you like to add any additional comments or just here if we have any questions from you?
And I brought the civil engineers here as well.
Thank you. Not to put Ryan on the spot, but Ryan, is there anything at this moment you'd like to add for any reason? Or not at the moment? Okay.
I saw plans submitted recently.
Okay. Thank you. All that being said, I'm going to make a motion to approve, subject to all technical comments. I have a second by Mr. Shannon. Any further discussion? Dr. Martin, did you have any?
No, I don't. I just wanted to say I love the fact that as approved plans is inside quotes in the language. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Mosley,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Goode.
Aye. Item passes. Thank you. It brings us to other business tonight. It looks like it's on the agenda for our other business is election of officers for the 2025 calendar year.
I have one quick thing, by the way, on that project. I just want to point out that I think that project represents the fact that we're about to see some commercial activity that we've been waiting on along James Campbell. And so I know the applicant left and didn't even hear that compliment, but I'm hoping and optimistic that we'll see some good things stemming from that.
Yeah, on that note, I'm pretty excited about it myself.
But with regards to election of officers, I also wanted to point out that it occurred to me as I sat down and saw Councilmember Coleman over there, who also had to get thrown into the hot seat of presiding over that difficult motion from earlier, that this is, I guess, his final commission meeting. The reason I know that is because tomorrow is his final council meeting, and he is the city council representative on this commission. And Councilmember Coleman, you've been on this commission now for what? 2.5 years?
Yeah, close to 3.
3 years almost. And he has been a very invaluable member of not just our council, but this commission also. And we've greatly benefited from your leadership and service. And we're looking forward to celebrating you more tomorrow night. But I did want to point that out, that this was your final meeting and how grateful we are for your service. And that also means that we'll have a vice chair opening for tonight's election of officers.
Chair, right?
Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion that Charlie Goetz would be the chair for the year 2025 for the Columbia
Second.
Municipal Planning Commission.
We have a motion and a second by Dr. Martin on the chair position. Any further discussion? Do we call the vote on that one? Yeah, we'll go ahead and call the vote on that one.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Mosley,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Goode.
Aye. I guess I vote for myself on that one.
It's all right. I'll vote for myself.
God, really?
That brings us to the vice chair position. Mr. Coleman, thank you for being a responsible and worthy vice chair. I appreciate that so much, and I've enjoyed working with you on the planning commission and getting to know you personally. So appreciate that, and you've done a great job. And I know you got great things in the future. So appreciate all you've done. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
don't know if anybody wants to be nominated or if anybody wants to raise their hand and offer a vice chair seat. Dr. Martin, you've done some.
Cut my light off.
Trying to tell us something?
Mr. Shannon?
It's not too bad. Charlie's almost always here.
Yeah.
I do nominate Mr. Sloan.
We have a nomination and a
I
second.
second it.
And a second for Mr. Sloan. Any further discussion on that one? Seeing none, we will call the vote for Mr. Sloan as the vice chair.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Mosley,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Humbly.
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Goode.
Aye. Vice chair is elected.
Wonderful.
And I think that brings us to all. On the other business, I would like to, and I don't know, I just want to point it out because it was part of some of the discussions. I know we're all aware of it, but on the item that we were discussing off Casey Lane, and I know that the confusion was talked about of the frontage and the back and we got to keep in mind that that's the design that our new zoning ordinance requires and stuff and wants and pushes for. So if that's something that as we as a commission are looking at and seeing that if it becomes an issue or a concern and we don't decide we don't like that, I don't know at what levels there's opportunities to try to make amendments to our text ordinance, depending on districts or zonings or things of that nature, if we want to look at in the future ever changing that. So just want to make that statement. So is that accurate?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That being said, it looks great. Any other discussion in other business?
That's a whole can of worms that I'll just.
You're welcome to go ahead.
No, I mean, I think that it is true that we should consider, are there some impracticalities with regards to how that turns out to where's the front door? Do you park in the back, walk around to the front? And the layered parking. On the other hand, I do like the fact and can appreciate the fact that this forced the building up closer to the road in a more residential area. Sort of like we talked about with Wawa's, one of the reasons, even though they ended up going full circle, one of the reasons I was more okay with the exceptions is because that was along a corridor. Granted, it had some residential behind it, but that was a little bit different from this. And so, similarly, the new gas station across the way, and I've told the owners this, that I wish that had been under the new ordinance, because that would have pushed the C-store closer to the road. It would have pushed the gas tanks in the back. They probably wouldn't have liked that, but I think that would have been an example of the ordinance at work doing a good job. So, it's not always going to work, but I think, it is working in some cases, and that's probably what you want in a good zoning ordinance.
Yeah, I think that's exactly, kind of wanted to just point that out. I mean, we, as you said, we had the Wawa issue recently, which they worked out great, and then in this one, and so, this is probably one of the first buildings that's vertical now that probably is under the new ordinance that on the commercial side.
USDA.
USDA, and then the oil change place on James Campbell.
Oh, that's right, the oil change on James.
place on James Campbell was the first.
Okay.
And the Dollar General.
Yeah.
To take 5?
Dollar General, we got multiple Dollar Generals now.
Okay, well, so I stand corrected.
Sure is.
All right.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second.
We have a second by Dr. Martin. Any other discussion? Call the vote.
Councilman Coleman,
Aye.
Dr. Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Shannon,
Aye.
Mr. Sloan,
Aye.
Ms. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Goetz,
Aye.